The sun was setting over the sprawling city of New Eden, casting long shadows across the bustling streets. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the hum of hovercrafts zipping through the sky. In the heart of the city, nestled between towering skyscrapers, was the Grand Bazaar, a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary collided. It was here that Elias Thorne, a humble gardener with a penchant for the unusual, found himself on a fateful evening. Elias was a man of simple tastes but boundless curiosity. His small garden on the outskirts of New Eden was a sanctuary of rare plants and flowers from across the galaxy. He had a gift for nurturing life, even in the most unlikely of places. But tonight, his curiosity had drawn him to the Grand Bazaar, where an auction of rare and exotic creatures was taking place. As he made his way through the crowded marketplace, Elias couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The auction was known for its shady dealings and questionable ethics, but Elias had heard rumors of a creature unlike any other, a sick alien dragon said to possess unimaginable powers. Despite his reservations, Elias knew he had to see it for himself. The auction hall was a dimly lit, cavernous space filled with the murmurs of eager bidders. Elias found a spot near the back, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of the dragon. The auctioneer, a tall, gaunt man with a voice like gravel, began the proceedings with a series of mundane items, rare artifacts, exotic pets, and the like. But Elias's attention was elsewhere. Finally, the moment arrived. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the hall as a large, ornate cage was wheeled onto the stage. Inside was the dragon, its scales dull and lifeless, its eyes half closed. It was smaller than Elias had imagined, no larger than a horse, but there was an undeniable aura of power about it. The crowd gasped in awe, but Elias's heart ached for the creature. It was clearly suffering. The bidding began, and the price quickly soared into the stratosphere. Elias knew he couldn't compete with the wealthy collectors and black market dealers, but something inside him compelled him to try. As the bids reached their peak, Elias raised his hand and shouted a number that left the room in stunned silence. It was everything he had, and then some. The auctioneer's gavel came down with a resounding crack. "Sold to the gentleman in the back," he declared. Elias's heart raced as he made his way to the stage, the weight of what he had just done settling in. He had just bought a sick alien dragon. What was he going to do now? As he approached the cage, the dragon's eyes flickered open, meeting his gaze. There was a spark of something, intelligence, perhaps, or recognition. Elias felt a strange connection, as if the dragon was speaking to him without words. He knew then that he had made the right decision, but he also knew that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Elias stood in the dimly lit auction hall, staring at the dragon he had just purchased. The creature's scales, though dull, shimmered faintly under the flickering lights. Its eyes, a deep, molten gold, seemed to pierce through Elias's very soul. The auctioneer handed him a small, ornate key and a set of instructions for the dragon's care, though Elias suspected they were woefully inadequate. With the help of a few burly attendants, Elias managed to transport the dragon to his modest home on the outskirts of New Eden. The journey was tense. The dragon remained eerily silent, its breathing shallow and labored. Elias's mind raced with questions. What had he gotten himself into? How could he possibly care for such a creature? And most importantly, what was wrong with it? Once home, Elias carefully unloaded the dragon into his garden, the only space large enough to accommodate it. He quickly realized that the dragon's condition was far worse than he had initially thought. Its scales were flaking off in places, revealing raw, inflamed skin beneath. Its breathing was irregular, and it seemed to be in constant pain. Elias knew he needed help. He reached out to Dr. Lyra Voss, a renowned xenobiologist and an old friend. Lyra was one of the few people Elias trusted implicitly, and she had a deep understanding of alien physiology. When she arrived, her face was a mixture of awe and concern. "This is incredible, Elias," she said, examining the dragon with a series of handheld scanners. "I've never seen anything like it. but it's in bad shape. I'm not sure if we can save it." Elias's heart sank. "There has to be something we can do," he insisted. "I can't just let it die." Lyra nodded, her expression determined. "We'll do everything we can, but it's going to take time and resources. This isn't just a sick animal, Elias. This is an intelligent being. It needs more than just medical care." Over the next few days, Elias and Lyra worked tirelessly to nurse the dragon back to health. They administered a series of treatments, including a rare serum derived from a plant Elias had cultivated in his garden. Slowly but surely, the dragon began to show signs of improvement. Its scales regained some of their luster, and its breathing became more regular. But as the dragon's physical condition improved, Elias began to notice something strange. The creature seemed to be communicating with him, not through words, but through a series of images and emotions that flashed through his mind. It was as if the dragon was trying to tell him something, but Elias couldn't quite understand. One night, as Elias sat by the dragon's side, he felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of urgency. The dragon's eyes locked onto his, and a single, clear image formed in his mind, a vast, dark void filled with swirling energy. Elias didn't know what it meant, but he knew it was important. The next morning, Elias woke to find the dragon gone. His heart raced as he searched the garden, but there was no sign of it. Just as he was about to panic, he heard a low, rumbling growl from above. He looked up to see the dragon perched on the roof of his house, its wings spread wide. For the first time, it looked strong, powerful, and alive. But before Elias could react, the dragon let out a deafening roar and took to the sky, disappearing into the clouds. Elias stood there, stunned and bewildered. What had just happened? And where was the dragon going? Elias stood in his garden, staring at the spot where the dragon had been just moments before. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Where had it gone? And why had it left so suddenly? He felt a deep sense of loss, as if a part of him had been torn away. As he turned to go back inside, he noticed something on the ground where the dragon had been lying. It was a small, metallic object, no larger than a coin, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. Elias picked it up, feeling a strange warmth emanating from it. He had no idea what it was, but he knew it was important. He took the object inside and placed it on his workbench, examining it closely. The patterns seemed to shift and change as he looked at them, as if they were alive. He felt sudden, inexplicable urge to touch it, and as his fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him. In an instant, Elias's vision blurred, and he was transported to another place. He found himself standing in a vast, dark void, surrounded by swirling energy. It was the same image the dragon had shown him, but this time it was real. As he looked around, he realized he wasn't alone. The dragon was there, its form shimmering and ethereal. It spoke to him, not with words, but with a series of images and emotions. Elias understood that the dragon was not just a creature, but a guardian, a protector of the balance between worlds. The dragon showed him a vision of a great threat, a force that sought to disrupt the balance and plunge the universe into chaos. It was a force that had been growing in power, and it was now on the verge of breaking through into their world. The dragon had been sent to find someone who could help stop it, and it had chosen Elias. Elias's mind reeled with the weight of what he had just learned. He was just a gardener, a simple man with a love for plants and a curiosity for the unusual. How could he possibly be expected to face such a threat? But the dragon's presence was reassuring. It had chosen him for a reason, and it believed in him. Elias knew he couldn't turn away. He had to do whatever it took to protect the balance, even if it meant risking everything. As the vision faded, Elias found himself back in his garden, the metallic object still in his hand. He knew what he had to do. He had to find the source of the threat and stop it before it was too late. But he couldn't do it alone. He needed help. He needed Lyra. Elias quickly packed a bag with supplies and set off for Lyra's lab. When he arrived, he found her working on a new project, her face lighting up with surprise and concern when she saw him. "Elias, what's wrong?" she asked, noticing the urgency in his eyes. Elias took a deep breath and began to explain everything. The dragon, the vision, the threat. Lyra listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each word. "This is incredible," she said when he finished. "But if what you're saying is true, we don't have much time. We need to act fast." Elias nodded. "I know, but I can't do this alone. I need your help." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with determination. "You have it. Whatever it takes, we'll stop this threat together." With Lyra by his side, Elias felt a renewed sense of hope. But he also knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger. They were about to embark on a journey that would test their limits and push them to the brink. But they had no choice. The fate of the universe depended on it. Elias and Lyra stood at the edge of a vast, desolate wasteland, the air thick with the stench of decay. The landscape was barren, with jagged rocks and twisted, skeletal trees stretching as far as the eye could see. In the distance, a massive, dark fortress loomed, its spires piercing the sky like the claws of some monstrous beast. This was the source of the threat, the heart of the darkness that sought to disrupt the balance between worlds. Elias could feel the malevolent energy emanating from the fortress, a palpable force that made his skin crawl. He knew that this was where they would face their greatest challenge. The dragon had guided them here, its presence a constant reassurance. It had shown them the way, but now it was up to them to confront the evil that lay within. Elias and Lyra had spent weeks preparing, gathering information and resources, but nothing could have fully prepared them for what they were about to face. As they approached the fortress, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the air, and the sky darkened as thick, black clouds rolled in. The fortress seemed to come alive, its walls shifting and writhing like a living organism. Elias and Lyra exchanged a glance, their resolve hardening. They knew there was no turning back now. They had to see this through, no matter the cost. The entrance to the fortress was a massive, arched gateway, its doors made of a strange, pulsating material that seemed to breathe. As they stepped inside, they were immediately enveloped in darkness. The air was thick and oppressive, and the walls seemed to close in around them. They moved cautiously through the labyrinthine corridors, their senses on high alert. The fortress was a maze of twisting passages and hidden traps, but the dragon's guidance helped them navigate the treacherous terrain. They could feel its presence, a steady, reassuring force that kept them moving forward. Finally, they reached the heart of the fortress, a vast, cavernous chamber filled with swirling, dark energy. At the center of the chamber stood a figure, cloaked in shadow, its form shifting and indistinct. This was the source of the threat, the entity that sought to disrupt the balance. Elias and Lyra stepped forward, their weapons at the ready. The figure turned to face them, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It spoke, its voice a chilling blend of whispers and screams. "You dare to challenge me," it hissed. "You are but insects, insignificant and weak. You cannot hope to stand against my power." Elias felt a surge of fear, but he pushed it down. He knew that fear would only weaken him. He had to stay strong, for Lyra, for the dragon, for the balance. "We may be small," he said, his voice steady, "but we are not alone, and we will not let you destroy everything we hold dear." The figure laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Elias's spine. "Foolish mortal, you cannot comprehend the forces at play. But if you wish to die, then so be it." With a wave of its hand, the figure unleashed a torrent of dark energy, the force of it knocking Elias and Lyra off their feet. They scrambled to their feet, their weapons raised, but they knew that conventional means would not be enough to defeat this enemy. As the figure advanced, Elias felt a sudden surge of energy within him. The metallic object he had found in the garden began to glow, its light piercing the darkness. He realized then that was a key to unlocking the dragon's true power. With a cry, Elias raised the object high, and a blinding light filled the chamber. The dragon's form materialized around him, its scales gleaming with an otherworldly radiance. It roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the fortress, and charged at the figure. The battle that followed was a clash of titans, the dragon's light against the figure's darkness. The chamber was filled with the sounds of roaring and screaming, the air crackling with energy. Elias and Lyra fought alongside the dragon, their weapons striking true, but it was the dragon's power that turned the tide. With a final, devastating blow, the dragon struck down the figure, its form disintegrating into nothingness. The dark energy that had filled the chamber began to dissipate, the fortress crumbling around them. Elias and Lyra stood amidst the ruins, their bodies battered and bruised, but their spirits unbroken. They had done it. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. But as they looked at the dragon, they realized that its form was fading, its light dimming. The dragon had given everything to protect the balance, and now it was time for it to return to its own world. Elias felt a deep sense of gratitude and sorrow. The dragon had chosen him, believed in him, and now it was leaving. But he knew that its sacrifice would not be in vain. The balance had been restored, and the universe was safe. As the dragon's form disappeared, Elias and Lyra were left standing in the ruins of the fortress, the weight of what they had accomplished settling in. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. But they also knew that their journey was far from over. There would be other threats, other challenges. But for now they could rest, knowing that they had made a difference. Section 5. Resolution. Elias stood in his garden, the morning sun casting a warm glow over the lush greenery. It had been weeks since the battle at the fortress, and life had slowly returned to normal. But Elias knew that he would never be the same. The experience had changed him, deepened his understanding of the world and his place in it. Lyra had returned to her lab, her work more important than ever. They had both been hailed as heroes, but Elias knew that the real hero was the dragon. It had sacrificed itself to protect the balance, and Elias felt a deep sense of responsibility to honor its memory. He had spent the past weeks tending to his garden, nurturing the plants and flowers with a renewed sense of purpose. The metallic object, the key to the dragon's power, now hung around his neck, a constant reminder of the journey they had undertaken. As he worked, Elias felt a familiar presence, a warmth that filled his heart. He looked up to see a shimmering, ethereal form materializing before him. It was the dragon, its form faint but unmistakable. Elias's breath caught in his throat. "You're here," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. The dragon's eyes met his, and he felt a surge of emotions, gratitude, love, and a deep sense of peace. The dragon had not left him, not truly. It was still with him, a part of him. Elias reached out, his hand passing through the dragon's form, but he could feel its presence, its warmth. He knew then that the dragon would always be with him, guiding him, protecting him. As the dragon's form faded, Elias felt a sense of closure. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had been worth it. He had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected to the world around him. He looked out over his garden, the plants and flowers thriving under his care. He knew that there would be other challenges, other threats, but he also knew that he was ready. He had the dragon's strength within him, and he would face whatever came his way with courage and determination. Elias took a deep breath, the scent of the garden filling his lungs. He felt a sense of peace, a deep, abiding contentment. The balance had been restored, and the universe was safe. But more than that, he had found his place in the world, his purpose. As he turned to go back inside, he felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to look up. The sky was clear, the sun shining brightly, but for a moment he thought he saw a faint, shimmering light, like a star twinkling in the distance. Elias smiled, knowing that the dragon was watching over him, guiding him, and protecting him. He had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. And he knew that, no matter what the future held, he would always have the dragon's strength within him. With a final glance at the sky, Elias turned and walked back into his home, ready to face whatever came next. The journey was far from over, but he was ready. He had the dragon's light within him, and he would carry it with him, always. The end.